Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Plug and Player. Today we're going to be looking at some real classic games that are all included on this Plug and Play. This is Atari's Plug and Play. The appearance of the Plug and Play is fairly modest, with a red button and a dial for the movement controls. I love this dial. If you've ever turned a dial on an old analog radio, that's what it feels like playing with this. To say a bit more about the Plug and Play itself, I remember counting this as one of my least favorite Plug and Plays because of the ancient aesthetic of the games. Although, even a child as young as I was should excuse the appearance. It's an Atari. The only visuals that these games might be able to stun you with are those that might result in an epileptic episode. Fortunately, the visuals on these games are not so aggressive, unless, of course, you want them to look aggressive. Yes, just like an actual Atari, or at least I think that was the intention, you can change the settings for each game. You can adjust visuals, difficulty, and even flip to different game modes within the same game. Anyway, let's talk about some of the specific games. You have your typical games like Pong and two versions of Breakout, which are basically the same. The other games are Video Olympics, which is basically Pong presented in Technicolor. Street Racer, a racing game that is perhaps too ambitious for the technology, what with its multiple game modes. Steeplechase, a game where you jump over obstacles on a horse while racing other riders. And Night Driver, a relatively exciting car racing game that puts your reflexes to the test and makes good use of the analog dial controls. The Plug and Play also has Demons to Diamonds, a shooting game that is really just a poor man's Space Invaders. This is one of my least favorite games on this Plug and Play. I hate the way the dead pink enemies absorb your laser when you try to shoot one of the diamonds, I think? This one I just find particularly boring. The next one is Circus Atari. This I remember being one of the more fondly received games when I was a child. This game, again putting good use to those smooth dial controls, has the player juggle two circus performers. The player has to try to get the performers to breach the top of the circus tent, which is accurately represented by these primary colored blocks. Jokes aside, this is actually a pretty fun game in this collection. The next game is Casino. Self-explanatory, confusing, boring. Next is Canyon Bomber. This rather uninteresting game tasks the player with destroying blocks in a canyon, trying to get more points than the computer. You can't spam bombs though. You can only have one bomb out at a time. This makes the game rather tedious and uninteresting. Now for the two best games on this Plug and Play, both called Warlords. The one version of the game is the one that I imagine owners of an Atari would have access to, while the other is the arcade version of it. This fun game tasks the player with bouncing a ball around the screen, trying to destroy the fortifications of the computer opponents, and then destroying those computer opponents by hitting their centers. The arcade version is the superior game. Not only is the ball represented as being on fire, but multiple fireballs can appear on the screen at once. The arcade game is also much faster than the console version, making the experience very exciting. What I find upsetting though is that multiplayer is not available for this game. This seems like a silly complaint, considering that it is a Plug and Play. The controller is the console after all. However, in an arcade game like this that was clearly designed to be played by more than one person, it makes me regret playing this on a Plug and Play. Therefore, if you have an emulator that can emulate this arcade version of Warlords so that more than one person can play it, I suggest looking into it. Warlords is the most worthwhile aspect of this Plug and Play. Besides that, this particular Plug and Play is best kept as a collectible. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this Plug and Play, be sure to check out my previous video on Kid Chameleon. Also, be sure to stay tuned for the next Plug and Player, where I'll be showing you a less poor version of a game that was mentioned in this video. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to a Tatum W. This channel would not be possible without people like you. Anyway guys, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.